So a few weeks ago I made these rows of stakes for going in front of archers, and several people asked if I would do a tutorial video on it. So here it is.
So you can see that what I've done is I have drilled holes all the way through these bases at an angle so that I can put some cocktail sticks through so that they make the stakes sticking up, as you can see there. Now I have tried sticking them on the surface, but they just don't hold very well. Putting a hole all the way through makes for a much more solid construction, and then snip off at the bottom and give it a file so that you take any lumps and bumps off, and then you can just grass them up. Very, very simple. You're going to need a drill. You can do it with a hand drill, but obviously it's a lot quicker if you have an electric drill like this. Mine's cordless, so that makes it even easier to use. You're going to need a sharp blade of some kind. Break them off so you've got a fresh blade all the time, so that you can cut through the sticks when you want to take them off the bottom, and then you can use a variety of files, whatever you need to get a nice smooth underside. So I'll show you the underside of those. So you get a relatively smooth underside so that they don't lumpy bumpy, they sit nice and flat on the mat. That really is it. A bit of texture I will show you some later stages, but essentially what I'm going to do is if I put a few of them on here to show you. So I am going to put some sand on there. In fact, what I'm using is my chinchilla dust. I still keep referring to it as alpaca dust. I've no idea why, it's just stuck in my head now. Chinchilla dust you can buy from pet shops. It's finer grained than most of the basing sand that I've used, and I think it just works well on 6mm bases. So coat the base in PVA, dab the whole base face down into the pot of chinchilla dust, or sand, whichever is your preference, and let it dry. I tend to add a little bit of water to my PVA because it soaks into the dust and helps bind the whole thing on, rather than the sand sitting on the surface of the glue and then a lot of it falling off.
So the first step is just to drill some holes at an angle all the way through the base. Just be very careful not to accidentally drill through your fingers. Then you need to put some PVA into the holes themselves, so you need to get the tips of the brush right down in there. This is so that when you poke the cocktail sticks through, that there's glue in there to hold them firmly into place. You need to push them through fairly firmly so they're wedged in as well. Now you need to put the sand, or in my case chinchilla dust, on the surface of the base. So I apply a watered down PVA glue, being careful not to get it on the stakes themselves. The reason I water it down slightly, not a lot, just a little bit, is it just soaks into that dust and makes the dust adhere better to the surface of the model. Next, you need to coat the model in whatever base colour you're going to use. In my case, I used burnt umber as my base colour for these models, but any dark brown will do. And then you're going to dry brush this the next step. I make sure I cover the whole model, including the stakes at this stage. This is just a priming the model ready for the next step. And the next step is to dry brush the model. Now in my case I used tan earth as my highlight colour, and just a very rough dry brush over the whole model. This is the colour scheme that I used with the rest of my Wars of the Roses models, so obviously I want to do the same on these stakes because they're going to be standing in front of those models. Next, you want to paint the stakes themselves. I've used beige brown here as the base colour, and then I picked out the tips in a lighter ivory colour, or a paler beige of some kind, just to show a little bit of cutting away at the tip of the stake themselves. Now you need to trim off the sticks on the bottom. Now I've left them on until this stage because it's an easy way to hold the base for all the other stages, but I find that now's a good time to take them off. Now I use clippers, but you can use a sharp knife, whatever you do. Obviously, as usual, the usual warning, just be careful. I try and trim as much off as I can with the clippers before I move on and grind the bottoms off and make them nice and flat. So I've used a Dremel here just to get any lumps and bumps off the bottom of the base so they sit nice and flat on your games table. So these are more or less finished now. So what I'm doing, and the next step is to just add your grass and tufts as required. I've got a particular basing scheme that I'm following so they match with the rest of my Wars of the Roses stuff. So once again, I start with a watered down PVA because I find that sticks to the materials better. And then I just stick the whole model face down in some turf. I've got a mixed turf mix, and then I add some grass tufts, and that's essentially it. The model is finished and ready for the games table. I've just done a few sets just to represent some mistakes, and I hope you think that's interesting, useful. Like I say, really easy thing to make, and I think they look very effective on the games table.